Good afternoon. How is everybody? Good. Okay, so you just did lunch. You're not allowed to go to sleep. If you do fall asleep, I will call you out really loudly and obnoxiously, so watch out. No, kidding. Thank you so much for having me. The very first thing I want to ask you is, who here is from Southern Nevada? Okay, and then Northern Nevada. Alrighty, so we're a little heavy in the South, but that's alright. I'm brand new to Nevada, so I don't really know the geography at all, but I do know the whole North and South thing. So,
And you know how to say it.
I do know how to say it. They taught me that at the interview. So thank you for recognizing that. Okay, so title of my presentation, some of you may recognize. Robbie dared me to sing it, and then when I told her I was going to do that, she said, "Never mind, I'm not giving you the $50."
Yeah, because $50.
What?
$50, because I owe Dodson $70 each year.
No, I will not sing it, but I know we all want to change the world. So if you recognize that, then I know how old you are. But anyway, so just to give you a brief introduction of me, I am the new library director at the Douglas County Public Library, which is the best library in the whole wide world. Before that, I was the director of the Pine River Library in Colorado, and that's in the southwest corner of the state, near the Four Corners. Last year, that library, when I was there, was the best small library in America. You might have seen the cover of Library Journal, but that was so long ago you won't remember it. But anyway, so that's something that I'm really excited about still. And I'm going to talk about that library quite a bit. And I'll talk about my current library as well. One of my librarians is in the audience today. Yay! And that's all the representation you're going to get from Douglas County. Just today. So what I'd like you to do right this minute is close your eyes for a minute and get rid of every single thing that you think about when you think of a traditional library. And I mean now, not 30 years ago traditional, but right now. And then take all that thinking and throw it out the window for the next 45 minutes. Because I'm going to talk about some things that are very different. And they may be very slight and small, but they are definitely different. So I hope I don't disappoint you when I say that. Okay. So, why is my clicker not clicking? Clicking. Not clicking.
You have to sing for it.
Oh, I knew somebody would say that. We're not clicking. Hold on, technical difficulties. That's my whole slide presentation. And we're out of here.
Nothing's moving.
I killed it.
Did you come?
I didn't, I swear.
It's working. It's not moving. Please pause. Please hold. Now sing.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll work on this.
Okay, is it working?
No, it is.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, yay. Thanks. Do I need to point it at her? Oh, it's working. Oh, good. Okay. All right. So, Rivka talked about a lot of things that are very similar to the things I'm going to talk about. Let's see if my notes will stay right there. And they won't. Okay. So I'm going to have them here. Okay. We're adapting. Okay. So, Rivka talked about some things that were very similar or just touched on some of the things that I'm going to talk about. So, I just think it's amazing that Robbie put this all together so well. We're just perfectly running one way after the other. Yes. Applause. Thank you. That's awesome. So, I want to talk about these three things in libraries. And they're not in any particular order, but I'm going to talk about facilities, programs, and people. And some of these things you maybe never thought of before or never thought about in the way that I'm going to talk about them. When it comes to facilities, we have our indoor spaces, our outdoor spaces, collections, and circulating and non-circulating, and our technology. And of course there are other things that make up our facility, but these are the basic things that I'm going to talk about. There's of course programming, both in the library and outside the library, and of course our people, which I think are probably the most important. And like I said, this is in no particular order. We have our staff and volunteers, we have our community, and we have partners. And you're probably thinking that community partners is one phrase, but I separated them for a reason, and I'll tell you about that when I get there. So let's talk about our indoor spaces. I know we're talking about change today, and there are things that you can do with your indoor spaces, even if you're not going to do construction, if you're from a small library or a large library. There are things that we can do pretty easily with our indoor spaces that will make very major changes. At the Library of Colorado, where I was, we had some really interesting things, and we were a very small library. That's why it's the best small library in America. It was a 12,000 square foot space indoors, and the service population was about 8,500, so very small, a lot smaller than what I have now. On the indoors, we had all of those things, with the exception of an art and craft room. I added that myself. But you can do other things with your indoor spaces as well. The possibilities are somewhat endless. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt, but
No.
are the presentations going to be available to watch online?
Are they?
Yes, they're being recorded.
Okay, then yes. Oh yeah, you don't have to. Whatever you want to do. Okay. So let me just tell you some interesting things that we did with some of these. Whiteboards are great. You can make a whole wall a whiteboard, and it's a wonderful art space. In that particular library, we had a community room with a divider down the middle, and many libraries have that. Our divider was a whiteboard on both sides, floor to ceiling, which I thought was really cool. Maybe you've seen this before, maybe not. But it's wonderful, especially for teens who have artistic expression, and instead of them doing graffiti in the bathrooms, or whatever they do, it's great to give them a giant whiteboard, and they can create a new work of art every day, every 5 minutes, whatever they want to do. You can do the same thing with chalkboard walls. The teen room at that particular library, all of the walls were a chalkboard. At Douglas County Public Library, we turned the storytime room, it's all chalkboard walls now. So the kids create art every day, during story time, after story time. If we're going to sing a song during story time, we put the words to the song on the chalkboard wall. So they're singing and learning at the same time. It's really nice. Movie walls. A movie wall, if you don't know, is just a big blank wall, white. You can put it anywhere, indoors or outdoors. At the Library of Colorado, we had an outdoor and an indoor, so we had indoor movies and outdoor movies. And I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. A smart board, sure, lots of libraries have those. Why is that revolutionary? Put a smart board in your storytime room and do digital storytime. It's fantastic. Little tiny kids understand smart boards better than I do. And they do. And it's really, really fantastic. Put a smart board in a place where you would never think to put a smart board. Fireplaces are not anything new, but they make indoor-outdoor fireplaces. You put one in a wall, and the indoor people enjoy the fireplace, and people outdoors can enjoy the fireplace. Especially if you're in a cold place like Northern Nevada. So, not so much down here maybe. One thing that I think belongs in a library is living creatures. I'm an animal lover myself. Even if you're not, that's okay. But living creatures do belong with us. I know you think, why would that be? Well, libraries are living, growing things, yes? Everybody believe that? Okay. Why should we not have living, growing things inside the library? Lots of libraries have fish tanks. Try something different. In the Library of Colorado, we had a paludarium. What's a paludarium? A paludarium is a cross between a terrarium and an aquarium, and it's for frogs. Poison dart frogs, to be specific. It's like a tiny little ecosystem in a tank. And if you've never seen one, I encourage you to go online. There's a million of them. And it's like a rainforest. So you have plants that are growing and changing. You have frogs that are growing and changing and multiplying. And the frogs make sounds, so it's constantly, got something going on in it. And it's an amazing learning tool. And plus, a lot of fun. So, and of course you can have room for arts, music, and so on. So this is a picture of one part of the Pine River Library, and down at the end, that fireplace is an indoor-outdoor fireplace. This is a paludarium. This particular picture, the large one, is not that great. I think I was too excited to hold the camera still. That's the day we got it. But that's the poison dart frog that we had there up at the top corner. Technically they're called Anthony's poison dart frogs. It's just one variety. They're not poisonous, in case you're wondering. So if they did get loose, no one would die. They never did get loose. They're poisonous in their own habitat, if they're like in a Brazilian rainforest, but in America they're not, and it's because of what they eat. And I can tell you more about that if you're interested. But they're not poisonous, they're really adorable. So let's talk about outdoor spaces. Our outdoor space in Colorado included all of those things and more. Not going to read the slides to you, but we did have some really cool stuff. So the idea started as just a garden, and that was actually before I got there. The board and the staff and everyone in the community said, let's have a garden, and it turned into all of those things. So we had a community garden that the community could get a plot. They paid a small fee that went to the garden club, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And they could grow anything they want, except marijuana. And no, that got asked every day. Every day people asked if they could grow marijuana at the library. I'm serious. Well, for one, the laws there are different. And that's one of the most things that people know about Colorado is that pot is legal in a different way than it is everywhere else. And so most people would ask that question. But you could grow anything else there. It doesn't matter if it's pumpkins or tomatoes or, just flowers. Anything you wanted to grow. And we would teach them how to do it. We would have classes that went along with the community the community garden. We had a greenhouse, which I'll show you pictures of. The greenhouse was not for the community. It was called a demonstration greenhouse. It was self-sustaining. It was powered by solar. And inside that, we grew a little bit of everything so that we could teach people how to grow in a greenhouse. And then whatever grew in the greenhouse, we would use in our cooking classes. And whatever was left went to a food bank. So it gave to the community in more ways than one. Does anybody know what a straw bale structure is? A couple of you? Okay. It's basically built of straw and mud, and it lasts for hundreds of years. A living roof, if you don't know what that is, the roof was just moss and flowers and plants, and it just grew and grew and grew. And during the summer and spring, it's really beautiful. On top of that, we had a beehive on top of the living roof. The beehive was great because it was no danger to anyone being up so high, but we had a bee cam inside that fed into the library and onto our website, so you could watch the bees 24/7. We had a beekeeper who would maintain it. We worked out an agreement with him. He could keep the honey as long as he would teach the community how to do it themselves, and he could do whatever he wanted with the honey. And it was a great arrangement. Everybody just absolutely loved it. It was really cool because the bee cam would get really, really close, and you could see bees like this big on the screen. It was awesome. So we had outdoor learning areas. We had a fruit orchard. Again, that food went to either cooking classes or a food bank. And we had outdoor seating. We had outdoor musical instruments. They didn't make the list because it kept running off the page. We had the outdoor movies. And, gosh, there's more, I'm sure. Oh, and the fence that surrounded all of this had to keep out the deer, so it was really high. But it was donated by BP. Now that's an unusual partnership, is for a library with a petroleum company. I mean, really, who would think of that? Probably no one, because a lot of people see the oil companies as big evil enemies. But they donated so much pipe from gas and oil that it was enough to make a fence out of. And the outdoor space was 17,000 square feet, bigger than the library. And they donated enough pipe to make a huge fence around it. So that was really, really cool. So here's some pictures. Pardon me while I drink. That's the library, that's the straw bale shed. Excuse me. Now this tiny little round thing, that's called a truth window. And usually people put them in straw bale sheds so that you can see that on the inside it really is just straw and mud. The design was just done by one of the workers, just for fun, and that's the door that leads inside. Okay, here's some pictures of the garden. Yeah, it's really pretty. So these plots here that are, kind of boxed in on wood, they were all different sizes to allow for all different abilities. We had ADA, basically, garden plots. So we had some really high for people who couldn't get down to the ground, and then we had those that were way low. The really low ones were great for kids. The really high ones were great for seniors. They all had their own irrigation, and there were 26 of them. This picture of the greenhouse is when it was being built, but it was almost finished. It's a geodesic dome that was built by a company that was local, even in this tiny little town in Colorado. And up at the top, you'll see the outdoor movie wall. It's just a big white wall. But when you market it as outdoor movies, it sounds way cool. It is. It's all in how you spin it. If you're just driving by, you think, oh, there's a big wall. But when you advertise it as outdoor movies, then it's like, woohoo! So, those chairs there are all made of recycled milk jugs. It's a very ecologically conscious library. But you could play movies in the wintertime, although it was a little cold. But the movies were projected onto that wall. It's like a drive-in without the cars. Everybody either uses our chairs or brings their own chairs, and it's fun. It's really great. There's another picture of the straw bale shed and some of the other designs of the landscape here. Okay, we're still talking about facilities. Now let's talk about the collections a little bit. A lot of libraries, as Rivka mentioned, and especially in that article in the New York Times. Oh, sorry, yes.
More questions on the end.
Oh, you can ask now. I'm sorry, I get carried away.
I was just wondering, do you sell or provide snacks?
At the library?
At your meeting?
Oh, yes. Okay, great question. We would do free popcorn. People could bring their own, but the Friends decided to sell beverages and candy, and it was a good fundraiser for the Friends.
On the inside and the outside?
Yes. Same for both. You're welcome. I'm sorry I didn't see you. Now where was I? Oh, yes. So, the collections aren't necessarily the same as they used to be, as that New York Times article and all of us know. People are circulating all kinds of things now. There are libraries circulating bicycles and bakeware and musical instruments, and it's fantastic. There are other things to think about with your collection as well. Many libraries are now Dewey-free, or Dewey-less. Sans Dewey, whatever you want to call it, not using Dewey Decimal anymore. Is anybody in here not Dewey-free? Awesome. How's? Whoa, wait.
It's not as awesome. We're still LC.
Oh, okay. So you're using LC instead.
Yeah.
Okay. Are all of you the same? These are all Las Vegas people. So it's not so awesome.
Not as awesome as I'm sure yours is.
Yes.
We do Dewey free in our quote Library of Things branch, the one that
These are the New York Times.
Yeah. Woo.
but just a small part of the collection. We basically color coded the collection to include areas that sort of relate to the things that we loan. So like how to, sewing, DIY, cooking, those kinds of things. And the staff had the idea of doing it, color coding it, like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And that was not so successful.
Okay.
Much better to put the cookbooks and just call out parts of the collection. Seems to work pretty effective.
Okay. Oh wow, that's great. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, some libraries are choosing to go Dewey free in different ways, and that's one I have not heard before. Just FYI, there will be a session at NLA this year if you're going about Dewey free, and I happen to be presenting it. So a little push there. But anyway, my library in Colorado is Dewey free, and they started that right before I got there, so I was a big part of that. And my current library is still using Dewey, but we're considering going Dewey free. It is a huge decision, and it is a big transition, and it can be scary. But it's not scary for the patrons, it's scary for us. And I want to talk about that in a minute. I'm kind of going fast because I don't want to run out of time. So I apologize if I'm going too fast. I'm also going really thirsty. Anyway. But anyway, we'll talk about the dewey-free thing a little bit in a minute. You also may, if you want to make changes to your collections, shift your focus. You know, maybe you've been the type of library that has a lot of local history or an archives or microfilm, things that were in traditional libraries 30 years ago, 50 years ago. And maybe they're just sitting there collecting dust, and you have to make that bold decision to not do that anymore and just be popular materials. That's one change that you can implement. You might need to rewrite your collection development policy. I just did that. And it was a big deal, but the only big deal with the patrons was that they loved it. They loved the new stuff that we're getting. So it's a really positive change. You may want to start circulating technology if you haven't. And of course there's circulating things, which we've already talked about today. But you can circulate all kinds of things. Almost anything can circulate. You can circulate, you know, bakeware and bicycles and musical instruments and tools, and I can't even name them all. Amazing things. And then there's technology. Again, this sort of touches on circulating tech items, but there's other technology changes that you can make. Maybe you need to convert to RFID if you haven't already. Maybe you need to increase access to technology for patrons. Maybe your time limits are too short on, you know, public internet stations. Or maybe you need to add Mac and Apple products. Yeah, every library I go to, it's all PCs, you know, for the public. Either there's 2 of them, or there's 50 of them, or 100 of them. That's great. I have not yet been to a library that has Macs for the public. Does anybody have them in their library? Oh, good. That's great. But what a minority in the room, you know? And when I bring that up to people, they're like, what? What? We're going to get MacBooks? I mean, you know, if I might have well had said like a rhinoceros or something. I mean, they were just like, what? Oh my God. But, you know, people need to learn to use these. Maybe somebody needs, you know, to practice on one before they apply for a job. Or maybe they just want to learn how. You know, and we can, you know, circulate an iPad and everything, but that's not the same as learning Mac at all. And I really don't even know Mac that well, and I have an iPad. But anyway, maybe we need to add these as our public computers. And that seems pretty radical, at least to the staff. Okay, now, innovative programming is not new to libraries either, but again, it may be really new to your community. Some of the programming I have done is up here. Almost all of them I have done at some library or another. In the library in Colorado, we did almost all of these. Like beekeeping was a real simple one because we had a beehive. But we had somebody come and do drum circles around the fire pit. Who would have thought we would have done that at a library? We did a lot of cooking classes. We had our movie nights. If you have gadgets that you're circulating, it's a really good idea to have classes about those gadgets. Sing-alongs I put up there, but what I should have said was movie sing-alongs. You know when they have those sing-alongs about like Sound of Music or Rocky Horror Picture Show? Those. People love those programs, depending on your community. But doing innovative programming is really not that scary, and you might get, you know, a really great response from the public. The people of our libraries, I have found that if you're going to implement these types of changes, the staff and the volunteers that do this really well, like we've talked about earlier today, they have energy, they have creativity, you know, they're excited about these things that we're going to do. When people ask me, well, how did you do all of that? How did you make all that happen? Well, it was these types of qualities. And sense of humor is actually number one. It really should have been at the top. You have to have a really good sense of humor. Now this is the part I talked about a minute ago. Community and community partners are not always the same. For instance, libraries have worked with schools forever. We've always worked with, you know, say the Boy Scouts or the Rotary Club or whatever. Those are kind of like, oh yeah, we know that. And we have partners that we've always had, like Friends of the Library or another library district down the road. or the state library. Those are all really given. But maybe some of these on the community side are not partners yet, and they should be. So I think a lot of librarians make the mistake of assuming that some of these people in the left column are automatically our partners in the right column, and they're not. And if they're not, then they should be. So when people have asked me, well, how did you work with the community at that tiny little library and do all those innovative things? Well, we worked with some of these groups that maybe we had never worked with before. I have found that veterans groups are incredibly wonderful to libraries, and they've been incredibly helpful to us, and I had never tapped into those before. The Red Cross was incredibly helpful, which was a surprise to me. We had the Garden Club, which is on the partner side. That was a group just like the Friends of the Library. They were an auxiliary of the library, just like the Friends. They're the ones who rented out the garden plots. They're the ones who helped us maintain the rest of the garden that was not rented out. They're the ones that advised us on what kind of soil and where things should be and what kind of, irrigation you should have and so on, because I can't grow anything. So I was definitely not the expert in that project. Watching the clock. Yes?
What is summer reading captain?
Oh, yeah. A lot of people have asked me that one. Where was that? Oh, there it is. That's really a lot simpler than it sounds, probably. The children's librarian came up with this. And she would have teenagers who would come in and help out with summer reading. But it was a step larger than that. First of all, she named them the summer reading captains, which helped them feel like they were a bigger part of the summer reading program. And she would do special training with them before it started. She would get them all something to wear that was different, like a special hat or apron or something to kind of separate them from your average everyday volunteer, and give them like special assignments. And really it was just a way to help the teens feel like they're a bigger part of children's literacy than just your average everyday volunteer who's counting flyers or passing out crayons. She would give them a little more responsibility and that extra nudge. And it was a really great way for these teens to A, build confidence, B, feel like they're really serving the community, and that they're doing something unique. That's all it was. It seems really simple on our side of things, but on their side of things, it was a really big deal. It was really cool. And you can call them anything you want, but that's what we call them.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. This is my favorite part of the presentation, and I'm running low on time. But this is something that I'm really passionate about, and that is, what is keeping us from doing some of these changes? We talked all day about change and implementing change, and what is it that makes us want to do these changes and so on. What is it that keeps you from doing these things? Is it we don't have the money, we don't have the time, we don't have adequate staff, we don't have the right stuff to make it happen, how are we going to actually do it? And I have found in my 20 years of experience that when you want to do something radical and different, and you talk to either your staff or your coworkers or your director or whatever, and you say, well, I really want to, I really want to get these frogs, or I really want to circulate bicycles. And it's like, oh, well, people might not like that. Or, I don't know, we don't have the time, and we don't have enough staff, and so-and-so just quit, and everybody gets all whiny about it. I hate that! So when I asked you at the beginning to throw out all your traditional thinking, this is where it's really going to kick in. It's fear. Fear is what's keeping you from doing all that. It's true. If you can't read the fine print, it says fear, it'll make you dirty your pants. It's true. That's what's really holding us back. We're afraid of change. We're afraid of what's going to happen. We're afraid of people not showing up. We're afraid the Friends of the Library won't like it. We're afraid one trustee won't like it, or something. These are like the top three. Oh my God, what if? We're afraid of the what ifs. What if nobody shows up to this program? We're going to have a program about how to make soap, and no one shows up. What if it doesn't go smoothly? What if we have technical problems? What if the power goes out? What if a deer runs into the garden and eats everything? That actually happened. true. One thing we didn't plan for, I'll give you an example. One thing we did not plan for when we built that garden, and we had a huge party. When we opened it, we did like a grand opening of the garden. It was fantastic. And then like a week later, gophers. We had 75-ish gophers burrowed through the garden, ate the roots of everything. It was a disaster. And I was like, what are we going to do? Because here we all are organic and love the earth and hug a tree and everything is hippy-dippy great. And then the gophers run through and I'm like, well, I don't want to murder any gophers. What are we going to do? And you would not believe all the people that built the garden were like, kill the gophers. I'm serious. And I was like, I don't want to kill them. They're so cute and sweet. And, you know, I'm catching dogs and I love the frogs and I love animals. I'm going to murder those gophers. They're going to eat our things. And I'm like, but they're soft and furry and sweet. Kill the gophers. I had to kill the gophers. I didn't want to kill them. I wanted to trap them and like set them free in the forest. Apparently that doesn't work. I told you I was going to take my gardens. So at the end of my career, someday I'll say, they'll say, what's the weirdest thing that happened as library director? One of those things will be gophers. I can guarantee you that. So that's another what if. What if it doesn't run smoothly and you get gopher? And so, and then what if the patrons don't like it? Because that's what we're here for, is patrons. Okay, so what do we do? Oh my God! We have to get rid of those fears. We have to ignore our fear of failure. Because it's all about fear of failing. Ignore it. Get over it. Do something. Get rid of that fear of failure. You have to have confidence. You have to have confidence. And remember, this is the wisest thing that any librarian has ever told me. She's a coworker a long time ago. She told me one day, she said, Amy, if we screw up, no one will die. That is the best advice I will ever give you. Except the gophers. Except the gophers. Thanks, Arnie. I'm done. It's true. But, you know, she said, Amy, we're not neurosurgeons. If we screw up one time, nobody's going to die. It'll be okay. The world will not end. The library will not close. And she was right. We talk a lot about success. And somebody said a few minutes before lunch something about success and successful. And I've done a workshop about this. We have to redefine what success means. What does successful even mean? I want you to, that's one of your takeaways. Think about what success really means. You know, librarians get all caught up in statistics. Statistics. I consider success a little differently than other people. Yes, I still have to take statistics. I still have to report them. I still have to pay attention to them. But they're not the end of everything. That's not what the whole success is. And I want you to think about that. One of the things that I think is making a library successful is, are they talking about us? Are we part of the conversation in our community? Are people even paying attention? If they are, then we must be doing something right. Unless, of course, it's about what Ripka was talking about in Sacramento in 2008. But that's not making a good conversation. I'm teasing. But I want you to take risks. Somebody did say take risks earlier, and I wanted to hug you. Take risks. Do something crazy. You know, have a staff cook-off, or, you know, I don't know what. Don't go first, but take risks. And the biggest takeaway of all, I want you all to say why not instead of why. When somebody brings you, especially for directors and bosses, if somebody brings you an idea, the first thing I want you to say is why not. Don't say why anymore. And that's the one thing we did at Pine River Library that made us great, was why not. If somebody came to me and said, Amy, I want to do a program on how to make candles. Okay. Why not? Because I bet you if you made a list of why not and a list of why, the why not column is going to win. Unless it involves like fire or something. It's going to be why not. That column is always going to win. Why not? I want you to remember that and take that home with you. And if somebody says, what are you talking about? They say, just give them my number. Tell them to call me. I'll explain it. Just blame it all on me. So, the part about success, I'm not going to go on and on about this, but think about what it means to be successful. How we measure success? What can we do besides statistics to think about success? I'm going to go fast now because we're running out of time. When you have, say, 100 people come to a program, I'm just making this up. Let's say you do have a program about beekeeping, and 100 people show up. That's great, right? That looks good on your statistics. Woohoo! But what if 99 of them walk out saying, that sucked, that was horrible, that guy was an idiot, I couldn't understand what he was saying, he was boring, it was awful, I never want to go to that again. And one person said, that was great, I loved it. Well, that's only 1% who liked it, and the 99 were a failure. So that's not successful, except on paper. So think about that. I could go on for an hour about that. But just remember what I said, no one's going to die if no one shows up. If no one shows up, either it was the wrong night or the wrong presenter, we might try it again, we might not, but nobody died. Go home with a clear head. Don't kick yourself. You tried, you took a risk, you did your best. Life goes on. It's okay. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. Same thing I just said, only not as well as Winston Churchill, but then we're pretty much, on the same page here. But just remember that when you want to try something new, the very first thing you should say is, why not? And then if you want to, play angel and devil in your head, then you can say why. And maybe you want to write those down, maybe not. But if somebody, wants to get frogs, or a gerbil, or whatever, as the library living thing, then do it. Try it. If it fails, it's okay. Questions?
I have a story.
Yes.
For those of you from LBCCLB, remember the aquarium at Summerlin.
Yeah.
Beautiful donated aquarium that was sponsored by a different group every month. The public freaked out about the money, resources, and space spent on the lovely aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
We removed it. Did you get any public plaque for some of your endeavors?
No.
I think that's what holds us back from trying it again.
Well, I understand that. We were very transparent about all of that. So when people asked where it came from, of course, we put a little sign on it that said who it was donated by.
We had it.
Okay, well,
Busing people you can't,
I know.
busing people.
You're never going to please everybody. You can do little signage, you can put something on your website. The frogs were donated by the guy who made the Pallet. And he was connected to somebody that was connected to the library kind of thing. And he just wanted to donate it, free. He maintained it, he would come like once a week and make sure everything was okay. We fed them every day. We maintained it on a daily basis. When people asked about it, we said, oh yeah, this guy down the road, he gave it to us. And his little sign was on the tank and that was it. Nobody said a word because they thought it was so cool. And maybe fish is different because fish are not that big of a deal. If you had a parrot or a gecko or something, maybe the excitement of it would, be more than what the resources does.
Well, that sponsorship idea a little more. Ours was donated, sponsored, supported, but you flipped it like, we're giving this excellent project a home, as opposed to, we wanted fish and we went out and found them.
Yeah.
It's a different way to sell it.
It is, and that's exactly what I was talking about. The way you market it makes a big difference. The way you explain things, the way you think about it, turn that all around and make it different. Any questions anywhere else? Okay, yes.
I think I was just piggybacking on Rebecca's statement, because maybe if it was launched like a campaign of some sort, and then it was not this thing that they were to remediate it and say, this is what we're doing, and maybe the community will feel a little more engaged.
Figured out buying.
Yeah, buy-in.
Stakeholders, buy-in. Stakeholders on learning are very, very important. We have to, recognize who all the stakeholders are.
Yeah, we're gonna, different demographics say from Nevada to Colorado as well, too.
Right.
I mean, like your branch, looking at it, adding that in there was seemed rather natural. Whereas here, Summerlin stood out.
Right.
Nevada being how it is, with the subculture, it's like, whoa, where did this money come from?
Right.
Why is the money doing this?
And one thing that'll help is renaming things. Don't, like if you have a story room, change it from story room to imagination room. you know, or whatever you want to call it. You know, and change the names of things within and without the library. It makes a big difference. It really does. So if you don't call it an aquarium and you call it, I don't know,
Living learning center.
there you go.
I'm real good like that.
Thank you. Well, our garden was called the Living Library.
Okay.
That's what we called it, was the Living Library. So yeah, exactly. You can call it a learning tool or an aquatic learning tool or whatever you want to call it. Rename it and it really will make a difference. Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you, Amy.
Very much.